Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. My name is Michelle Chalfant. I am delighted to be here with you today, as always. Today we have on the show Emily Blefeld, and let me just tell you what a show it was. We talked all about family constellation work. Now, this is something that I've been hearing about for the last few years, and that's why I reached out to Emily. I was like, okay, it's time for you to be on the show. Imagine this. Ready? So imagine that you're someone that has, let's say, issues with self-worth or loving yourself, maybe issues with manifestation, things of that nature. But what if it's not caused by your personal life trauma? What if it could be something that was handed down to you from your great-great-great-great-grandmother or great-grandfather? It's called epigenetic imprinting. And this happens to all of us. Yes. And this term called family constellation work helps to clear this from us. So that is what we talked about today. It is so cool. I love this work. I love having people on that are absolutely like cutting edge. And this is one of those shows today. You're going to love it. So let me talk to you a little bit about Emily Blefeld, and then we're going to jump right in. She is an internationally known trainer for systematic family constellations, and she's also a psychotherapist. She specializes in supporting change agents, visionaries, and entrepreneurs to dismantle the old paradigms, outdated narratives, and ancient codes that hold them back and open to a full expression of their life's purpose and soul's path. She is incredibly gifted, I have to tell you, but you will be able to figure that out when you start listening. So here we go with the one and only Miss Emily Blefeld. So welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Emily Blefeld.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me on your podcast and also for just the incredible work that you're bringing to the world. I have had the honor of listening to the different speakers you brought together, and really been inspired by the trainings that you offer people. So it's a real gift and honor and privilege to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. I think you know that I feel the same about you. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing in the world.
Thanks.
I've had the opportunity to benefit from your personal or from the work that you're putting out in the world, as is my husband. And that is family constellation work, which is such a fascinating. I was just asking you, is this like becoming a more well-known term? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's more and more research right now around epigenetics, which is this research that's coming out revealing that we carry anywhere from 7 to 14 generations of trauma memory in our cells. And because this research is now becoming available, we're looking at how do you heal epigenetic imprinting and the traumas that we carry.
Wow. I was just thinking this morning, I was on a walk this morning and I had the thought, like, we are victim to our lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say it like that? Because that was the thought that, I don't know, like I was thinking about our podcast we're going to do today. And I was like, we really are victim to our lineage. And my son was sharing with me some things that my husband was sharing about his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And my son turned to my husband and said, "Thank you, Dad, for doing your work, because you're breaking that lineage." And I was like, oof.
Wow, what an amazing compliment to receive,
Yeah.
and to have your son share that with him. That's so moving, and it's true. I think many of us recognize that what's unconscious will continue to permeate our lives until it's made conscious. And
Yeah.
that's true now that we know with this research that's available, we know that that's true in the lineage as well. That which has gone unresolved or is unconscious or is unacknowledged in what's behind us
Mm-hmm.
will repeat itself. Just like when a vine on a plant gets nipped down by the roots, you'll see it, that same mark in the flowers. And what ends up naturally happening is we reach down deep into our roots to try to heal that nip or that break, how to restore it, how to connect what's been disconnected, how to give it the nutrients it needs so that we can flower. But as adults, we start to wonder, like, why am I still bound in unconscious love and loyalty to my mother's misery? Why am I
Mm.
why am I turning down and trying to tend her pain in order to have permission to be joyous ourselves? Or we might even see it in business, where we find ourselves in a fear response to our own success or our own failures. We may feel some sort of unconscious loyalty to the business imprints that we've received from
Mm-hmm.
our parents' successes, our parents' poverty or displacement or challenges. So it's
Wow.
powerful to think about it as if we're victims on some sense. And actually, it's interesting you bring up victim consciousness because it's a core principle in constellation work, that we actually carry the victims and the perpetrators in our inherited lineage. So what that means is, I'm half Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
and although I don't have a Nazi, um, I'm not a descendant of Nazi lineage, I
Mm-hmm.
actually carry the imprinting of that culture and that trauma. So I'm a descendant of Jewish people, and yet I carry the imprinting of the Nazi perfectionism of the war on Jews because it changed the fate of the people that followed. So if you're a descendant of the Armenian population, you will carry qualities and traits of the Turkish soldiers, because they've been somehow a part of the legacy that goes on in families. So I find it all the time in business where we carry like these imprints about war, how we soldier on in life, how we show up to our projects or our tasks or our initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I find that level of perfectionism and that specific strategy, I can, feel the imprints of war that live behind me that are showing up when I'm just thinking about, my everyday book launch, for example. you know,
Wow. Oh my gosh. Let's go deeper into what this is. For people that are listening that are like, what are you talking about? Are you serious? Carry this down the lineage? Like, what is this thing that you're talking about? So, what is family constellation work? What is this?
Family constellation work it's a modality that was created by Bert Hellinger, who's a man from Germany, who
Mm-hmm.
studied with the Zulu people and learned various, South African traditions. He studied with Virginia Satir, and so learned essential therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he was a psychotherapist in various ways and learned all different types of, structural therapy. So you may see like hints of it in all these different cultures and all these different pockets, but it's predominantly a therapy that looks at the system that we walk around with.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to kind of differentiate it from regular therapy is that, somebody comes into the door and they say, I am struggling with anxiety and I
Mm-hmm.
want to clear my panic attacks, or I'm struggling with depression. And no
Mm-hmm.
matter how much medication I take or how much therapy I've done, I always have these bouts of grief that overtake me and take away my will to live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the constellation work is less interested in what is causing the symptom, and they're more interested in who is the symptom.
Ooh.
So look at, like anxiety or depression, and we'll ask whose anxiety is vibrating in the cells of your body, whose depression is present. And then you use organs of perception. So if there's a way of working individually and there's a way of working in a group. If you're working in a group, the person who's wanting to look at their depression might say, the facilitator would ask the person to pick a representative for their mother, a representative for their father. They pick people in the group who are total strangers to them to stand up and step in and represent a grandmother or a grandfather, and then ask somebody to represent the depression they're carrying. And through this embodied process where these folks that are just, showing up with curiosity, with whatever issue they're coming to the workshop with, they stand up and they turn on their organs of perception, their intuition, their capacity to perceive. You don't have to be gifted to represent. You can actually just tune into your body. Actually, our human body has this instrument of attunement that everyone is endowed with. And so one of my favorite parts about constellation work is just the experience itself of participating in it, because I do find your intuition really will open, and your capacity to perceive the multidimensional consciousness that's affecting you opens in a tremendous way. So everybody stands there, they get quiet and their hearts open. And then the facilitator will ask the person who's representing the client's mother, how is she feeling, or what's happening for her? And you'll ask the father, and you'll kind of work generationally back until you find the place in the lineage where literally somebody starts to feel the emotions that the client's been carrying. And then we build out the scene. We'll put in a representative for the child that died in a car crash, and the grandmother's grief or sadness over the death of that child. And the client will say, I had never realized that I'm carrying my grandmother's grief. And but every time, I try to move forward in my life, I have this, tremendous grief. And we'll find out that this child got in a car crash right as it was turning to embark on a big adventure in their life or a threshold in their life. And the stories usually match really specifically to the client's issue. I got into constellation work not because I was interested in this woo-woo practice. I actually was an evidence-based psychotherapist who was working predominantly with entrepreneurs and visionaries and artists. And I was interested in what many of them were amazing in their own way. Their businesses were thriving, they were successful, and yet they had this common denominator of feeling this insatiability inside, nothing ever fully satiated them, nothing ever filled them. And no matter how successful we were in the coaching and in the therapy, there was this void. So I went looking for tools that get into the wells of the caverns of the heart, and came across constellation work and started working with it. I think my first, couple hundred constellations were individual. So I wasn't working with a group. I was just tuning in with my own perception, and with the training of constellation work, to what is that void, and then finding in the lineage where the void was vibrating in this harmonic resonance with someone in their ancestry. And what's powerful is the person just looks at the ancestor, and the ancestor looks at their descendant, and there's healing movements that occur between the descendant and the facilitator, or the descendant and I always call the client the in some ways I would say the ancestors are facilitating. So the descendant and the ancestor, there's a resonance with them, and there's usually some compassion that opens. So when I describe the compassion, I think many people don't think that they're people that do this work don't always come to it with an interest in, I'm so interested in learning more about my grandfather. Usually the grandfather is a drunk who really disappointed the family, or there's a tragedy that no one talks about. And so on some level, there's some experience of just not wanting to go there. And yet symptom repeats itself often generation after generation. So when somebody shows up at in my office, it's typically because of something that couldn't heal in just the traditional forms, or something that persists no matter what you do,
Right.
and ready to go beyond it for themselves and for the lineage that follows.
That's beautiful. Beautifully said. And
Yes.
I'm so visual. I'm like imagining all the people as you're sculpting them around the room and all this. But to just kind of give you an give people an example of what you were talking about. I was trying to think of the issue that I had when I was in session with you with my great grandfather. So my great grandfather, maybe it was like an issue of not feeling good enough or something like that. And my great grandfather left my grandmother with, I don't remember how many kids, 3 kids, I think, 3 or 4 kids. And this is back in, I mean, my great grandfather, this is probably the late 1800s, I think. And you had me embody my great grandfather. So, of course, in our family, he's like, he left grandmother Rose, like great grandmother Rose, they said was the salt of the earth, the most lovely woman. And this guy left her. So we don't like him. That's like what I never knew him, of course, but that's in our family what we've always said. Like, how could you have left Mother Rose? Like, she was lovely and so kind and, an angel walking the earth. That's all I've ever heard about Grandmother Rose. I'm named after, that's my middle name. I'm named after her because everyone loved her, but we don't like her husband. But you had me embody his energy.
Hmm. You got it. Yeah.
And what happened? I was like, what? That guy? I was like, no, and you said, yes, however you guided me into him. And I stepped into his energy and I felt this like self-loathing energy. And it was like, he didn't feel good enough to be with someone that everybody loved so much. So
Yeah.
one day he just left, and he did leave her with 3 small children, and she had to go to work in a factory and all of these things. It was like 1890 maybe, or the early or 1900. And when I stepped into his energy and started having thoughts that he had and then felt his energy, it might have brought me to tears. I don't remember. It's been a few months now, but I remember thinking, holy crap, did that shift my whole perspective on why he left? And all
Right.
this, not that I had anger because I didn't know him, but all this angst that I had, like, well, he was such a jerk. He left Mother Rose. I was like, oh my God, this poor man, because everyone loved, but everybody called her Mother Rose, but she was my great grandmother.
Mhm.
What person to live up to. No wonder
Right.
he left. So I completely understood him, and all my heaviness around him, it was just gone. It was
Yeah.
gone. I was like, whoa, that was one little teeny tiny part of our session. It was like such a mind blow. Such a
Yeah. And
blow.
you're demonstrating the perfect, the perfect example for the, like, kind of the unresolved unconscious. I like to think of it like a family soul on some
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
I do quite a bit of animism, shamanism work, and we work with parts, and we work with, for each individual,
Mhm.
retrieving parts of their soul that maybe they lost in some experience in their life where their
Mhm.
soul needed to shatter or leave or
Yep.
separate from the body.
Yep.
But systemic constellation work feels a bit like family soul retrieval,
Yep.
that some level we're retrieving the parts of the family system that have been cast out and that have been excluded, denied, cut off from, or somebody's been just compartmentalized in that, like, the bad one and the good
Mhm.
one, or that,
Mhm.
that polarization that occurs. And what ends up happening is, because life is connected to its roots, like, we only have a body because it came from our parents, from their parents, from
Yep.
their parents. Like, this heart that beats in our body is connected to the lineage it grew from. We actually feel when a part of our root has been excluded. Like, we have this vibrational energetic
Mm.
that everything that is part of us belongs. So, in typical positive psychology, typical therapy, you would say, when you have this part you hate about yourself, the work is around loving that part and including that part and
Yeah.
holding it passionately
Yeah.
and beginning to acknowledge it and see it and befriend it. The
Mhm.
same is true in the epigenetic imprinting, that
Mm.
actually it's not about forgiveness. we're not forgiving your grandfather. We are actually acknowledging his place in your family system, his
Yeah.
own heart experience. And unfortunately, you were carrying like that feeling of not being good enough.
Mm-hmm.
When it's unresolved in him, it lives on in the family soul and it travels down the line. And although your parents might not experience it, you experience it. It lives in, it oftentimes can skip a generation. So your kids might carry things that are for your parents that you don't carry.
Right.
It's common, but that feeling of not good enough will continue on until somebody as courageous as you says, I'm going to look it in the eye. I'm going to give it a wink. I'm going to make it mine, this
Yeah.
feeling, and I'm going to love into it. And
Yeah.
so you're consciously actually loving him and unconsciously loving your roots by trying to bring it into healing and into resonance and into harmony.
Mm.
And that's what we do. We just, as flowers on the vine, we do this for those we
So
come from.
beautiful. And I'm realizing as you're speaking, like there's so much more to us than meets the eye. I mean,
Yeah.
really, like
Yes.
kind of like you just said, like, oh, I'm on meds for whatever you said, like anxiety. I'm in therapy and nothing's working because we are so much more than these physical human bodies that people see every day, right?
Yeah.
There is that energetic perspective, and now we have this. I wrote it down: epigenetic imprinting from God only knows who, like great grand aunts, grandparents, and all of the above, and then some.
And it's even true with our gifts. I think
Yeah.
many times people set really potent intentions for their artistry, their
Mm.
visions in life, their relationships. Like you may have an incredibly potent intention for what you want to bring forward. Like for you, Michelle, bringing forward the adult chair. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
that is often our business movements and initiatives or our entrepreneurial efforts
Mm-hmm.
to go from a psychotherapist to evolve into the seat that you sit in today. It
Mm-hmm.
came from somewhere. You know,
Oh,
there's
it has
a
an energy all of its own. Like I said, and
got its
even my
own
coaches
lineage.
will say that they're like, we feel the wave. I'm like, yeah, I know. We all have
Yeah.
our surfboards and we're riding the wave. Yeah. It's
And
not me. Yeah.
I love looking at like the system of our movements as well, or this
Yeah.
like when somebody writes a book, for example, you can set up the characters in the book
Yeah.
and represent them and work with them, and you'll find an unconscious family imprint or a
Mm.
soul incarnation imprint that is actually underneath this plot and this story. And when they get writer's block and are stuck, it's often some systemic trauma that needs healing, or some past
Mm-hmm.
life or generational trauma that needs inclusion. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
same with kids. You'll see kids that are rebellious or disobedient on some level, or they're struggling with learning disabilities or ADHD, and or they're the black sheep and getting kind of targeted or scapegoated.
Mm-hmm.
And when you actually work with the consciousness that they're embodying, who they're including through that behavior, with this work, in 1 to 3 sessions, you will see huge transformation, particularly with kids, more so even than adults, because
Really?
they're less patterned, they're less committed to their habits and
Mm.
behaviors. So
Mm-hmm.
they'll feel the genetic shift in their bodies. They'll feel their cells come back into vibration with their own soul and their own unique blueprint,
Wow.
and will be less, resonant with including their father who's been excluded, or including, maybe there's been multiple abortions that occurred before this child, and the
Mm.
child, feels that energy that they're not the oldest, they're the third.
Wow.
And so once that is, child doesn't have to do the process, the parents do. But once the process is complete, they calm. Their whole nervous system just calms. So it's profound
Wow.
to see like these sacrificial lambs and these peacemakers in our family, and our, the
Yeah.
ones that are like railing with the structures of guilt and shame and fear that kind of sequester our truth and squeeze the juice out of life. It's like so great to see all of them just come into place where they're just existing as themselves.
Gosh, I love hearing you say that kids can do this work.
Yeah.
How beautiful. So what age, like what ages do you take to do, like what's the earliest age? Let's say that.
When I say that about kids, the kid would be the primary client, but the parent actually does the constellation for the child. So the parent can work, um, if a father would need to get consent
Yeah.
to work if the father was the primary client, they would get the mother's consent
Okay.
to work on behalf of the child. But a mother can, because the mother birthed the child, um, and even adoptive mothers,
Mm-hmm.
or
Wow.
uh, sperm donor. We're doing a lot more with families with sperm donors, surrogate mothers, um, egg donors, all of
No
it. it's
way.
it's been really awesome to look at those constellations and feel the frequencies that are affecting the child. But you would bring this system of the parent and whoever's willing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you work on behalf of that symptom that is affecting the child, and you'll see huge transformation occur.
Get out. I love
Yeah.
that. In 1 to 3 sessions.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for, 12 sessions to up to a year with clients, and had a thriving practice at the
Yeah.
time. But I found I was teaching people coping skills.
Yeah.
I was teaching them, tools and ways to navigate the kind of the peaks and troughs of life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I said, they were succeeding in all the external structures that
Mm-hmm.
occur
Mm-hmm.
in their world. You can like look and point and see everything has improved, but this underlying current
Yeah.
that kind of tends the inner landscape of their being was not shifting. And I did find with constellation work, the effectiveness is of everything I'm trained in. I would say, if there's an ancestral entanglement, it's one of the deepest, most profound tools for transmuting anything that lives as a pattern in your life. And it's an excellent tool. I mean, with what I was sharing with you a little bit earlier, was just it's this amazing tool for manifestation, and a
Yeah.
tool for like working with even putting businesses in order. For example, like sometimes people will come to me and say, I have this dream and I need my team to be working in alignment with my vision. And no matter what I
Mm.
do, like right before a launch, it seems that there's these implosions that occur.
Mm.
No matter how good I am with my books, I still am finding myself like over budget, under resourced, or I apply for jobs and I get to the finals and I always get rejected. And so we work with looking at the lineage of the business, the prior founders, um, the we call it, you can call it like the eject chair, that
Yeah.
like might be somebody who worked for you as an assistant, and then they get fired or they leave in some huffy way, and then anyone that sits in that chair gets ejected somehow. And so there's a systemic lineage to working as a team. And so you can look at somebody's organization and get it flowing seamlessly, like the rivers and streams that just, flow across the land, with healthy systemic work. So I love that, doing that as well.
You're like, of course, I'm going to be signing up for more sessions for the business. Not, and then it's not that the company's not doing great, because it is, but it's flowing well with all the people that work with me. But I want to know what we can clear even more. I did not know this.
And you're magical. I mean, I just
So
really
fun.
loved, for everyone listening to this podcast, one of the things I really appreciate about Michelle is your capacity to, tap into all the wisdom traditions, all the different modalities, the range of people you have on this podcast. You're a collector of all things resonant. And so
Yes.
it makes sense that you would want to include, some of the tools of your lineage that they live in your bones,
They
these,
do.
like in your fingertips, in your energy body, in your bones,
Mm.
are this memory of what works, of what manifests alchemically. And
Mm.
so I always love to work with the law of correspondence, that expression of like as above, so below.
Uh-huh.
Um, in some ways, when you give somebody a representation, like you have a person represent an ancestor who's gifted in your lineage, it comes into form. And then you have like an object that they hold that's representing your intention for your business. And it
Mm.
starts to move the field um,
Wow.
in, into manifestation. So I do love working with like divination practices that are not, sounds, the word divination sounds kind of witchy or overly spiritual, but
Uh-huh.
it's actually very practical, like objects that represent your outcome for your business, your
Mhm.
team leaders, your marketing, like collaborators, your book
Mm.
agent. Like you have objects in on your desk, and you work with, instead of having everyone stand and represent those things, you work with putting them into patterns that flow, and healing the patterns that are out of order or out of alignment. So
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I think you already do this energetically. It would be fun to kind of play
We
what's
do need to play.
possible.
I love that. You're speaking my love language, all of what you're saying. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. It was beautiful. Um, Talk about, and you kind of just touched on this, but manifesting. So, can you expand that a little bit more? Like how I'm thinking through like people that, and I remember, gosh, 20 years ago teaching like law of attraction courses, this is before The Secret. I
Yes.
remember someone handed me an Abraham Hicks cassette tape in like 1996, I think. So that's when I was introduced to them. I was like, oh, this is, yeah, hello. And so I love all that. But I also know that sometimes we are blocked. So it could be, again,
Yes.
down the family line or this lineage, and we don't even know why we're blocked. So talk about that more, a little bit more, if you could, about the manifesting.
Okay. So the the first step is like healing any inherited wounds that
Hmm.
are keeping you stuck, which we just spoke about.
Hmm.
And it starts with like identifying what is blocking you. So you start with an intention. You
Yep.
say, I I want to make six figures this year
Hmm.
in my work, or
Yep.
I want to manifest a soulmate and a
Hmm.
love partner that goes beyond my like 50 first dates,
Hmm.
or I want to feel health in my body. Like you
Hmm.
have a really clear intention that
Okay.
isn't muddled with a lot of like, it's not like I don't want to feel unhappy anymore. It's
Mm.
actually I want to feel happy. So you
Yeah.
find the language for a resonant intention, and then you actually, stoke your being. So you have to kind of like stoke the vibrational frequencies of your voltage is the
Hmm.
way I describe it. So
Hmm.
I find, I allow the soles of my feet to root into the earth, drink in
Hmm.
the nutrients, feel the galaxy of cells in my body and let it shimmer with the starlight beyond.
Mm.
Um, Connect to the light of 100,000 suns and draw it into every chakra in my body and connect to the spinning chakras. So you're kind of bringing yourself into a pulse. You're bringing your
Hmm.
heart into a rhythm with the pulse of the earth. I
Hmm.
don't really like to do manifestation work unless I've like agreed intentionally with higher
Yes.
vibrational energy to go looking into the deepest muck that I've inherited. So it starts
Yes.
like an agreement. I'm doing this,
Hmm.
and I'm doing this with everything I've got.
Hmm.
That's it. It's like you're putting on your boots and you're going
Yeah.
um, on
Yeah.
a journey, on a quest, and you pack everything you think you might need, and you
Uh-huh.
do that energetically first. Then we travel into the field of the inherited imprinting that stands between you and that.
Mm.
So if your desire is to generate wealth in your life, we would look at what stands between you and that, and it might be a belief that I'm not good enough, or a belief
Mhm.
that I'm an imposter.
Mhm.
And once people, and the more visible I become, the more people will find out. Or it
Mhm.
could be that I don't want to really be successful because I don't really want to lose my freedom. And money
Mm.
means I have to work myself to death. And when you listen to the person talking about, or you find yourself even journaling, if you're doing this alone, you look for those idioms, like I worked myself to death, or
Mm.
you look for the little phrases, because I find the ancestors are talking inside of the language you use when you describe your resistance. Somebody once
Ooh.
said, I really want to let the world in, and I want more community, but when I'm out in public, I just feel like something's going to explode in my heart. And I'm just in so much anxiety. And so my question was, when was there an explosion? Where in the
Ooh.
lineage was there actually an explosion?
Mhm.
So you would just journal or listen to your client around, what is the resistance? And then we use this process where, whether it's working individually or working in a group, you find the original point of the trauma,
Mhm.
and you do an alchemical process that includes quantum consciousness and quantum fields to be able to heal. It's not that far out. Most of the most ordinary people love it, and more esoteric people love it as well. So it touches everyone, but it's usually, 1 to 2 hour process where you're kind of building out the embodied genogram, the family lineage, finding the origin and clearing it. If we were working with objects,
Mhm.
doing this, which is
Mhm.
what I was kind of describing with manifestation,
Mhm.
you would put an object for you, an object for your intention. So if your intention is to be, I want to have the greatest self-worth, I want to be self-confident, you put an object for self-worth, and then you put an object down for low self-worth, or you know insecurities, or feeling like a fraud. You kind of put that object down. So you've got like an object for you, an object for the intention, and an object for the symptom, which
Mhm.
we just kind of talked about. And you hold them in your hand and you make contact with them.
Mhm.
And actually, when you're putting in an object for the insecurity, for example,
Mhm.
you're giving it a physical form. This is making it material. Is this too specific for
No, this
you?
is good. No, I love
Okay.
it.
So there's 4 dimensions of consciousness, according to just this law of correspondence theory that I'm speaking of.
Mhm.
Uh, there's the material realm, which is like, say you choose a rock to represent that insecurity or that imposter syndrome or whatever. And then there's that rock is now bringing that energy that lives in your field, that's on the 2nd dimension, this kind of energetic field. It's bringing
Mhm.
it into form. It's giving it a physical form. So it
Mhm.
actually takes it out of your body
Mhm.
and it puts it into physical form. Ancestors and spirit realms, which are on kind of this 3rd dimension, don't have a physical body,
Right.
but they have unresolved emotions. And so those unresolved emotions that live, we are finding them in human bodies' genetic imprinting. So this
Mm.
ancestor at the 3rd dimension is hanging out with this unresolved life, maybe not fully complete in transitioning to these next realms, because it's struggling with, what's unconscious. That
Mhm.
family's kind of like the when I was talking about soul retrieval, it's like a part of the family soul that's stuck.
Yeah.
It lives in Michelle's body, or it lives in Emily's body.
Yeah.
It finds its way into form, because everything in this kind of spiritual realm needs a material counterpart to continue on. So when you put it in a rock, you take it out of your body, and
Mhm.
you give a pathway
Mhm.
between this object
Yeah.
and this 3rd dimension realm, this like ancestral realm. And you start to talk to your ancestors through this process, and you just say, I don't want to carry this energy that is, I know I'm a worthy human, and I do not want to carry this energy that is not mine any further. I want to break agreement with this generational pattern of unworthiness and be able to stand in my sovereignty in
Mm.
its fullness. And we start to set up a process where then we put objects for your parents, objects for your grandparents, objects for your great grandparents, and we'll work with the symptom to
Mhm.
find, we'll kind of move it back. And you'll see it looks, there's like lots of, objects all over your table, but you'll find, where's the material form, like where's the ancestor that is now in a rock, where that symptom really belongs, like your grandfather, for example, and that one that you used. And
Mhm.
we'd move that energy back and we put it next to your grandfather. Then we go back to Michelle, like that object that's just you. And we have you look at the object that's your intention. And in this space, you're actually working with the realms of energy. You're working with the realms of form. You're working with the realms of cellular imprinting. And then you begin to work with your unique soul energetic blueprint that says, I'm actually here to have an influence on everyone who listens to this podcast, that they walk away feeling, whole and complete in themselves. They are enough. That just their existence makes them enough. They don't need to do anything to know that innate worthiness. And that's, one of Michelle's dharmas through the adult chair. And for everyone listening, I'm just making this up as we go. My hope is that you all walk away with some joy and some knowingness of yourself. So you take this object that's you and you have it turn and you have it face the intention. And then you feel in that space if there's flow or if there's continued resistance. And if you still feel like I can't move towards it, you put another one in. And we look at like, what's the next block? And we would do this with, say you have a workshop and you want to have 100 people enroll in the workshop. You would do that. You'd set up 100 objects.
Yeah.
And set yourself up and you'd look at, can I welcome 100 people into this event? And then we'd look at what's standing between you and there, and we'd set up your team, and we'd set up the intention of the event, the legacy of the event, what it's going to do afterwards. So you're always working with the material form, the energetic level, the ancestral and spiritual level, and then this realm of kind of the void, this like this nirvana, this space that oftentimes people reach through plant medicine journeys or through deep meditation retreats where they kind of feel that connection to the oneness of everything.
Right.
All four come alive in these processes where you're of manifestation. And that's just like one example of ways that you with the correspondence. But as you move an object, if it has a direct channel to an ancestor or a direct channel to like participants in your program, for example, if there's an object for them and you move it, the field of energy around those people or ancestors actually shifts.
Yes. And
you will see things come into order and harmony and rhythm and beauty in ways that are phenomenal. And for me as a therapist, again, evidence-based, my dad is a doctor, and just, I was trained in New England and very, very connected to the academia.
Yeah.
It was a really big journey to kind of open to my third eye and to welcome, conversation and direct connection with these energies that are maybe invisible to the eye, but living in the body.
Like I said before, like we are so much more than meets the eye. I'm going to say it again. Like we look like we're just these physical beings walking around, but like there is an energy that actually we're in the middle of. I mean, if you think about our energy field, like these physical bodies are in the middle of this beautiful energy field. Yes. And I loved having you on today because we're really raising the awareness again around the fact that there are so many different ways to clear our blocks. There's so many different ways to relieve anxiety, depression, feeling not good enough, our inner fraud, all of those things. And this is an incredible way to do that.
Yeah. People often say, I want to be free from the past so I can live into my kind of unencumbered, like liberated future.
Yeah.
And something I've learned through this process is that actually including the threads of your past and transmuting them alchemically, like really finding what's the light, like how can I let in, rather than keeping away some of the aspects of your past that haunt you, or maybe haunted your parents or grandparents or great grandparents, rather than kind of having these protective safeguards against them. You can find how to transmute the darkness and draw the light from it so that you can belong on some level to your lineage's greatness. If you come from perpetrators, if you come from victims, that we can kind of go beyond the beyond in that paradigm and actually welcome our purpose and our strategy and our capacity to move forward. If we have
Yeah.
perpetrating colonizing lineage,
Yeah.
or have victims, that fear response, that kind of scarcity consciousness, that immigration and displacement that keeps us from being able to fully occupy or take up space. Like, there's gifts that live in both those lineages that are even further back, and as you draw those forward, the rest can transmute, and what is unconscious and unresolved can heal.
Oh, just beautiful. Just beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Gosh, is there anything else? How would someone get trained in this?
um, we offer a training program called the Alchemical Constellations Training Certification that will start. This one is what's completing in May, so it'll probably start next year. We also offer um, courses. Like, I have a course coming up around unlocking generational alchemy, where manifestation and magic meet. And my partner offers a course called Science, Myth, Magic, and Mystery, which is more around kind of quantum, the quantum fields, and unpacking more of the collective imprints. So there's kind of personal deep dives and training. There's systemic constellation trainers all over the US and internationally. And there are workshops that are available. So I highly recommend doing some Zoom work as well as live work, because it's really different.
Yes.
Check us out at seeingwithyourheart.com. We have many free events and small classes and long-term training programs. You don't actually have to be trained as a therapist or a coach to also train in this. You'll learn through this training. You'll learn a lot around energy medicine, the synergy of sound healing, and how to heal on a cellular level. You'll learn mediumship and psychic and psi consciousness to be able to travel with the communication in these various realms. And you'll learn how to heal intergenerational trauma through alchemical processes that don't pathologize the clients that you're working with. So I would
Dang.
definitely recommend us and many others as well.
Yeah. I love that quantum is becoming somewhat of a mainstream word.
Yeah.
We're getting
Yeah.
there.
Yes. Yeah.
We're getting there. I've got some friends that work in the quantum field, and holy moly, the healing from cancer to emotional issues, it's like it's profound. So I'm so glad to. I
It
didn't know
is.
that you were doing. I mean, obviously that's the work you're doing when you're doing family constellation, but I love hearing you say that Dan is doing that. So Dan, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the quantum fields are important because there's a matrix that we follow. And
Yep.
in, like, unconscious belonging to our family, like when somebody gets sick, for example, and
Yeah.
dies of cancer, who we loved,
Mm-hmm.
it's not uncommon to see a child follow. Like, if they lost their parent
Mm-hmm.
um, too soon or tragically, you'll see the living descendant find a way to follow that movement.
Mm.
And they'll end up with health issues or struggles in their own turning towards life, or you might see patterns of or suicidal ideation following. And although they might not even know that parent, or might have been estranged from that parent in some way, still the energy can follow through the quantum matrix. So absolutely, it's
Wow.
when we heal, whoever the courageous person is that says, I'll do this, I'll look,
Mm-hmm.
um, you'll feel the generations behind heal and the generations following. And I
Yeah.
originally trained in social work, and I was very interested in the person in the system. Like, when you work with one person, how can the whole community heal? And that's what this does. It's been such a fun
Yeah.
modality to learn more about.
It's incredible, I have to say. It really is. Like, and I love, again, you're healing you're healing the generations behind you and in front, like future
You
and
are.
past. That's what's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, it's like what your husband's doing for your son. What
Yeah.
an awesome thing to hear as a
Yeah.
parent, like your
Yeah.
child thanking you for doing your work, because
Yeah.
it can stop with you.
Absolutely.
You can break agreements and break patterns, and that pattern does not continue on and does not get passed down.
Mm-hmm. Oh. I love it. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you for having me. And also thank you to your listeners for asking about this work and this process to, co-create the possibility of this conversation. I'm always inspired by what you're sharing with the world, and I'm just grateful to be another voice in the tapestry of what you're weaving, Michelle.
Thank you. And we are going to put your say your website one more time. We're going to put all of this in the show notes. So one more time.
It's seeingwithyourheart.com.
Thank you. I hope that you all enjoyed the show today as much as I did. She is so much fun to listen to, and boy, does she know her stuff. Do not forget to check her out. And that's all I've got for you guys. I will see you next week, seated right here in the adult chair.